Good morning and welcome to the Community Sector Council. I'm Shelley Martin, CPA, and of course, as you know, I'm with the as you may know, I'm with the By the Books project here at CSCNL. And today's webinar, excuse me, is on accounting software. So basically, how to assess whether or not we need software, and if we do, how can we assess which one we need? Because of course there's many options out there for you. So just before we get started, I do want to do a check just to ensure that you can hear me okay. If you could just raise your hand or type a quick yes, I hear you, or yes into the chat bar, that'd be great. All right, thanks, Sandra. I can see you can hear me fine there. I do apologize. I have a bit of a cold. It's that time of year when, you know, we're all, well, there's enough viruses going around and we're all busy and catching them. So, all right. So I don't know how much you know about our By the Books program, but it is a program basically designed to or aimed at improving financial knowledge, communication in the nonprofit sector. And I've really been focusing on our skills building piece this fall, but we actually have other areas in this program that we're going to be putting more emphasis on this coming winter. For example, we're hoping to we will have a directory of services. So professionals in the community who have experience with and are willing to work with nonprofit organizations and charities to help meet their finance or accounting needs. We are also starting a program called Treasures for Tomorrow. So this program is basically helping prepare people to become finance volunteers. So we aim to have some groups that would be willing to have these people attend, say, board meetings and just basically help them prepare to become a finance volunteer for an organization. And we'd also are going to set up some networking framework or structure where finance staff and volunteers at nonprofits and charities have an opportunity to network, get together, pass along knowledge, best practices, that kind of thing. So we're really excited to be working on these things this winter and spring, of course, and you'll be hearing a lot more about those in the coming months. So today, of course, is our last webinar for 2017. I cannot believe how late in the year it is and how close to Christmas it is. So today we're going to be talking about, as you know, accounting, I guess, ways to keep our books, ways to track our economic transactions. So accounting systems, of course, are a necessary function for any organization. It doesn't matter how big or small. It doesn't matter what your activities are. You need some system whereby you can keep your books. I'm just double checking now. Oh, perfect. Thank you, Sandra. I will try to keep my best to keep an eye on the questions area. And if you type a question, I will try to address it as quickly as possible so I can catch the question related to the material that I'm talking about at the time. So bear with me. It requires my diverting my attention to another area of the webinar, but I'll do my best. All right, so as I said, accounting systems, they're critical. You need to have some method of recording your activities. So there's various ways you can do that. Of course, you can do it manually. Paper is an option, albeit not one that's used as commonly anymore. But we will talk about that as an option. Using spreadsheets, for example, to do your bookkeeping, it's still considered manual in terms of it's not a software program. So spreadsheets being, you know, the common ones we would know of are Excel or even Google Sheets. It's an option if you don't have a Microsoft Office package. When it comes to accounting software, I mean, there's lots of different software options out there. You can have desktop software, so it's actually a program that gets installed on your computer or your desktop or laptop, whatever it is you're using. But you also have cloud accounting options. So these don't require software downloaded to your computer. You actually access them over the internet. So we'll talk about the advantages and disadvantages of these options. So of course, the software options, a common one you may have heard of is Simply Accounting or Sage. And Cloud Accounting, QuickBooks Online. Please note, I'm not recommending these products. I'm not telling you those are the ones you need. Those are just examples of those types of options. You have to bear with me a little. I'll try not to cough too much. All right, so as I said, you can do your bookkeeping manually. Paper is really inexpensive. You're not reliant on any technology whatsoever, but there are certainly some disadvantages to using paper, being prone to errors. So you are not only entering things manually, but you're often entering things on different ledgers or different sheets. So you're duplicating entry, which is not only time consuming, but can also result in mistakes being made. Even something as simple as adding an account to your books is much harder when you were doing things on paper. So it can be time consuming that way to reconstruct what your account or what your ledger looks like. If you make a mistake, you can literally spend hours looking for mistakes, fixing mistakes. You spend a lot of time creating reports that you need. It's not adaptable to changes, so like I said, even a simple process of adding an account can take quite a bit of effort. So it's really only suitable if your organization is simple. And by simple, I mean likely small, but more so maybe you only have one source of funds and you use those funds, you distribute that money based on, I don't know, applications you get. So you assess an application and you distribute a fund. So just something very simple in nature as to what is happening with the organization. Now, that's not saying, paper is an option, but you certainly have to consider, is it an option for your particular organization? Now, you can also keep your books manually, but use a computer to do so. So as I said, some spreadsheet program, for example, it's still fairly inexpensive. Google Sheets is actually free. You just need a Google account to sign up for a Google account. It is less time consuming than paper. It's more adaptable, so it's easier to add an account if you're using a spreadsheet program, for example. But it still may require a lot of time. You still may have different sheets whereby you're entering the same information on different sheets, which could result in errors again. And you're still reliant on technology. So you need a computer if you don't have one, if you want to use Google Sheets. Even you need access, maybe access to the internet if you're using Google Sheets or something like that. So you are affected by technology. And of course, if you don't back up information properly, you are also susceptible to data loss. So again, this might be better suited to smaller, simpler organizations than a bigger organization that has a lot of different programs and a lot of different ways they're getting funding and that kind of thing. All right, so accounting software, of course, it has a lot of advantages. It is much more efficient. So So you enter data once, and usually that data will get carried over to the other areas that it needs to get carried over from, which improves accuracy, right? So you're not only are you not having to enter it multiple times, but there's also less of a mistake when it carries over to another report or another ledger. It's more scalable, so it is much easier to adapt as the organization grows. Excuse me. There's usually availability of technical support, so even a purchased desktop program, there's usually somewhere you can contact, even if it's just there's a help section on the website, or you know, email information, email addresses you can contact, or even phone numbers to call. Probably all three are available. For security, with software, of course, most software packages will allow you to use passwords to access. So it's an additional level of security aside from the password you may use to get into your computer. And also, if you have multiple users, then some software packages actually allow you to limit access to the appropriate people. So if you are wanting to make sure your financial duties are segregated properly, then you can often limit access that certain people have. And of course, that will depend on the software program that you pick if you are looking for a software program. Now, of course, the downside is generally software requires more upfront cost, although there are some software options that are very cost effective, and there are even some free options. So in the handouts that I've included for this webinar, there are a couple of documents talking about free software options that you can use. So I will talk about that a little bit at the end. You are, of course, still vulnerable to data loss if you're using a software package, whether it be, you know, the power quits, the computer breaks down in the middle of your entering data, if you catch a virus, or if your computer catches or downloads a virus, or even not backing up properly. Those are concerns, of course, with using software. You can still make mistakes entering your data once in accounting software, so just because you don't have to enter it 3 times doesn't mean you can't make a mistake when doing so. And depending on the experience of the person who would be using the software, you may require some upfront training to use that, or some upfront time investment on their behalf. So these are just some, you know, pros and cons, we'll say, of software. Now, to go one step further, there are an increasing number of cloud accounting options now. So this is basically when you don't have a software program that you purchase and that's downloaded or installed on your desktop or your laptop, you can actually access these programs through the internet. So they offer various benefits. One being that it's accessible from anywhere. So because you just need internet access, right? So you can access it from wherever you are. Most of them have options for multiple users. So whether that be the user has a separate username and password to access that system. Automatic updates, and this is a very convenient advantage, whereby you don't have to rely on yourself for going and finding updates or being sent updates and having to install them on your computer. The cloud provider would make sure that the updates are automatic. So that can be, that can be quite handy when it comes to if you're using a payroll module, for example, knowing that the appropriate rates for your source deductions are always up to date without having to remember to make sure that they're up to date. Also, when it comes to cloud accounting, there's often good customer support. So there may even be a way for your support technician to see exactly what it is that you're having an issue with. So it's more of a, I guess, a personalized support. So those are some great advantages if you're going to choose an accounting program. And of course, these are in addition to advantages that come from software in general. The disadvantage, of course, is you do need internet access. So you can't often access it without internet access. Although I believe there are options whereby you can both download something to your computer and access it through the internet, so that you can work on it when you're not connected, and then when you connect, it updates between the two. So I believe that's an option. And of course, some people would be concerned with, well, my books are on, in this cloud where hackers or the like may be able to get in and get our information. And where that would certainly be something you would have to consider. It's probably likely that the provider would have better security than what you could even provide on your own. So it's certainly, yes, it's a possibility, but it's probably not as likely as you may fear it would be. So just some things to keep in mind if you are considering, or if you think you'd like to consider some cloud accounting options. All right, so those are just some pros and cons of the different options available to you. The next thing you'll probably be thinking is, well, do I even need a software to begin with? So some things for you to consider there is, first of all, is what you have now working for you. Maybe it is. Maybe your needs are being met. Can you easily see your operating excess or losses? Can you easily see your cash flow situation? Do you find that due to the structure of your organization, it's not that time consuming for you? The needs of your board are being met. They're getting the reports they need when they need them. Those types of things. Basically, if it's not broke, you don't have to fix it. So think about, first of all, is what we have sufficient? If it is, then maybe you don't really need to consider another option at this time. Another consideration would be, as I said earlier, the size of the organization. The larger the organization is, basically, the more it might benefit from software. So if you have increasing numbers of employees, for example, the diversity of the programs that you offer, if you have multiple projects on the go, if you have a lot of donors and therefore creating a lot of receipts, the larger the organization gets, the more computerized accounting options might benefit you due to the advantages that we discussed already. Also, reports can be generated quickly with computerized software, right? Versus if you're doing things manually. So just some things to think about there. Another consideration, and this is a big one, I mean, we all know cost is a consideration, but what financial accounting expertise does the person have who will be in charge of the finances? So are they a numbers person? are they detail oriented? So if you're using spreadsheets for keeping your data, as we noted, you may have to enter things several times in different sheets. So if someone is not a detailed oriented person, it would not be hard to miss entering data somewhere where it needs to be entered, right? It wouldn't be hard to make an error. So considering the needs of the person who has to do this work is important. Are they proficient with spreadsheets, if that's an option you're thinking about? Are they comfortable with spreadsheets and how they work? So that's a very significant consideration. And the fourth one, which sometimes ties into the size of the organization as well, but the complexity of the organization. So even a small organization can be complex, depending on, like I said, things like how many different sources they have for getting funds, or how many different programs they have, if they have to track receivables balances, these types of things. So if you have a complex structure, then you're probably looking at some software being better suited for the organization. All right, so you assess those 4 points and you say, yes, we need software. Which one? Because there's many different options out there. And the point of this webinar is not to tell you what your software should be, but to tell you how you can figure that out. So things to consider then, of course, cost. How much money do we have to spend? And while cost shouldn't be your only factor in determining, it has to play some amount. I mean, we are all involved in organizations that do not have unlimited funds. So cost has to be a consideration. And there are some very cost-effective programs out there. So you can, chances are you can find one to meet your needs. How many users do you need? Some programs are not designed for multiple accounting users, and maybe you don't need that, but maybe you do. So make sure when you're looking at the software, that's something that you're considering. For access, do you need remote access, or do you want to be able to access that from anywhere? So are you, maybe a cloud accounting option would work better for you depending on your circumstance. What features or add-ons do you need? So oftentimes when you get or purchase a software package, if you want to purchase things like a payroll module or an inventory tracking module, you may have to pay extra. So think about the features that you do need, and of course whether or not the software already has those features, or even if you think there are features that you don't need immediately but you may need in the near future. That's something that you should be considering when you're looking at your options. Something else is the software commonly used? So some of the handouts that you'll see, if you haven't downloaded them already, there are some handouts available to you, and many of them recommend, or not recommend, but tell you of software options that are available that you can look into, but you will not have heard of all of them. So is it important to you to use something that others are familiar with so that you can use each other to figure things out if you need to? That might be something you're looking at. And also, a lot of the software options, when you go to their websites and check them out, there are a lot that have free trials. Some as long as 60 days, which is quite a while. So if you have some time, if this is not a decision you need to make immediately and need to choose something immediately, sign up for a couple of free trials. You don't have to input all of your organization information in them, but you can use the free trial to kind of get a feel for the software to see if you like it. And you'd be surprised at how many options do actually give you a free trial option. So like I said, if you have some time, if this is not an immediate decision, make use of some of those free trials. Okay, so you've gone through and assessed all the things that you're looking for in your software program, and you've come up with several alternatives. So you may have identified 2 or 3 software or cloud accounting options that you think would work for you, and maybe contracting out is an option, right? So if that might be something that your organization, when you assess the time and the experience needed to do this work, and compare it to the actual cost of contracting out, perhaps maybe that's something you've determined is useful for your organization. So it's a viable alternative, right? So make sure you know what your alternatives are. Then quantify. So when it comes to cost, what upfront costs of each alternative might you have? So of course, the software itself may have an upfront cost, whether or not you have the appropriate hardware. So maybe you have a very old desktop that actually needs different, it's not up to date enough, right? You may have to get something more suitable for using the software. Whether or not there's going to be training costs associated with that particular alternative. And also make sure you consider if the costs are one-time versus recurring, right? So they may be costs that are going to happen regularly. Excuse me. All right, so once you've identified the cost, I mean, the quantitative always plays a part. We have to know whether or not we can actually afford an option, but the cost should not be your only consideration. So you have to look at other non-financial factors, such as will we see a lot of efficiencies from one program over another? How much time will we save? Again, the initial time investment, we can quantify it if there's an actual cost in terms of, you know, if you want to sign up for some program. So there are courses you can do to show you how to use Simply Accounting, for example, or Excel. So that can be easily quantified. Sometimes the time investment you can't quantify as easy, but you still need to consider whether or not, or how much of a time investment there will be for picking up a particular option. So you may have staff that are already familiar with some of your options that you've decided on. When it comes to contracting out, if that's one of your options, then you can look at the fact that more than likely the personnel will be experienced, or you probably wouldn't have picked that as an option, right? So you're looking for the fact that those personnel would have more experience than someone in your organization, and that's one of the reasons that will be attractive to you. But then on the other side, you're also having to rely on an external party for just timing of getting reports. So can you ensure you get the reports when you need them and your information is processed on a timely basis? You may want to inquire with that group or that whoever it is you're contracting out with about ensuring your data is backed up and is secure. So these are some things that you certainly want to think about if contracting out is going to be something you're interested in. And then, of course, when you assess the qualitative and the quantitative aspects of each option, you draw a conclusion as to the best one for you. And it may not be clear. Maybe you have an option that is clearly the best one. But oftentimes you really have to sit down and look at the advantages and disadvantages of each and just draw a conclusion that's best for your organization. So I hope that is somewhat helpful to you. I mean, I can't sit here and tell you what program works for your organization. Only you can do that. But hopefully this provides you with some methodology by which you can use to figure out, okay, how do we structure our thought process to determine, one, if we even need software. If we do, what are we looking for? What options do we have? And then assessing those options to come to a conclusion. So keep in mind, as I said, there are some really cost-effective software options out there. Ones that you tend to think of, oh, well, you know, if we need to get this program and it's $800, or no, some are actually very cost-effective, and some are designed for, you know, nonprofit organizations even. And as I said, some are actually free. Now, oftentimes with free software, there are limitations. So they may be free up to, say, 100 invoices a month or something of that nature, which might be great for some organizations, but of course, other larger organizations may exceed that amount. But then there are also levels of different levels at different costs for what you can get with the software options. And you know, you don't need to have everything, right? You only need to buy what your organization needs. So don't spend money on things that, don't spend money on a payroll module if, you know, you have 2 employees and you can use the payroll deductions online calculator, for example, at CRA for calculating payroll. So make sure you're thinking about what is it we really need, because we don't have all, you know, we don't have excess funds to spend on things we don't need. So it, you know, just make sure you're putting some good thought into finding the alternative that works the best for you. All right, do you guys have any questions before I take a quick look at the resources in the handouts, the links and handouts there? I'll just wait a second to see if there's any questions. Okay, I don't see any, so I'll just keep an eye on it as I'm talking here. But so there are some great resources in handouts along with this webinar. You can see the first one there is actually written up by BDC for their free and low-cost accounting and invoicing software for your business. So the link is there. It wasn't a very good printable document, which is why I didn't include it in the handout. But if you check out here, there is a large list of options that might work for you. And like I said, some of them are quite cost effective. There's also another article here for nonprofit accounting software, which that you can check out. The Canada Charity Guide has different suggestions for different areas. So of course, nonprofit software is one of the things that they discuss there. There's also a great site for free online bookkeeping and accounting courses. So if you need some additional knowledge in that area, check out that website. And the bookkeeping master is actually a guy who will show you on YouTube how to set up your accounts in a spreadsheet if that's the option you choose to go with. So that link is there as well, and he also is connected to the free online bookkeeping and accounting courses. So those are some links you may want to check out. Now, in the handouts to the webinar, there are several articles. The first one is the top 8 free accounting software for nonprofits. So again, these talk about, well, they are free up to certain levels, but that may work for your organization. And with all of these software options, you can also go online and find reviews about them. So if you have a little bit of time to spend here looking for software options, there's a lot of information available to you, a lot of good information. There's a couple of documents actually talking about free and low-cost alternatives for you. For example, there is one called Accounts, which is a Windows software designed for small nonprofit organizations in the US and Canada. And there's another program that's connected to that or that works with that called Donations, which is also the Windows software. And the donation software is one whereby you can track funders and issue receipts. So there are a lot of options out there, and hopefully these handouts will give you some direction of even just where to go look. And also, like I said, a lot of these will tell you if there's free trial periods available. So there is a lot of information here, but like I said, if you have, hopefully you're not in a situation where we need this tomorrow, and you have a little bit of time to do your bit of research and figure out which one might work best for you. As always, thank you very much for attending. I still don't see any questions there. I hope I haven't missed anything, but I think I'm good. I think it's updating fine. As usual, when we close out the webinar, you will get sent a brief, it's very brief, feedback form, and we send these out for every single event or any kind of training that we do. So I do ask if you could probably would literally take a minute, but if you could take a minute to complete that, that would be fabulous. And that's it. Thank you very much for attending. If you do have questions, you can always contact me at any time at shelleymartin@cscnl.ca. And our number, as well as our toll-free number, is listed here as well. And you can always give me a ring or send me an email at any time if you have any questions. I'll do my best to help you out. If I don't see you or speak to you before next week, have a very wonderful holiday, and I'm sure I will be connecting with you in the new year. Thank you very much. Have a great day.